Good morning, Morai Rabotai. Bruchim Abayim to yet another Masechta. We're going to be doing Masechet Makkot Be'ezrat Hashem in Seder Nezikin, one of the shortest Masechtas of roughly some 20 pages. And, we're Sephardim, so we're used to maybe getting Makkot, but learning Makkot is a whole different story. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to looking forward to be learning this together, finishing it together, Imrit Hashem, in a timely manner. Now, Masechet Makkot comes after Masechet Sanhedrin. The order of it is Sanhedrin, Makkot, Shvuot. Now, the reason for that, as we will see shortly in our Gemara, is because at the end of Masechet Sanhedrin speaks about Edim Zomemim. Now, if you have learned Masechet Sanhedrin, you open Masechet Sanhedrin and say, wait a second, there's nothing of such nature in the end of Masechet Sanhedrin. End of Masechet Sanhedrin is actually a very geschmack, 20 pages of Agata, talking about Yarovam ben Nevat and Haran Mishal v'Azariah, and who has all of the geschmack, we call it Perek Chelek, all of those amazing agatas that you hear from Masechet Sanhedrin is all tucked away in the end of Masechet Sanhedrin in Perek Chelek, in the 11th chapter of Masechet Sanhedrin. Now, the truth of the matter is, if you open your Mishnayot, you'll notice that the prakim are switched. Really, Perek Chelek is the 10th Perek, and Elu Nechnakin is really the last Perek of Sanhedrin. And you'll see from our Gemara Rashi that this is really what the Gemara held, that the last Perek, the very last Perek of Sanhedrin is Perek Elu Nechnakin, speaking about people who get chenek, people who get mitot bedin, of the capital punishment in the bedin. So that has the last Mishnah, which is discussing Masechet Sanhedrin in Daf Petet, speaking about Edim Zomemim, who do not necessarily get the same punishment that they wanted to afflict the other person with. Now, that brings us to explain a short hakdama, a little preface of what exactly even is Edim Zomemim. What exactly is the concept of Zomim? Now, Makkot, as we mentioned, speaks about people who get punished, the punishment of lashes getting from the Torah. Now, Masechet Makkot really starts discussing those in Daf Yud Bet, in the 3rd Perek of Masechet Makkot, but we deviate from that in the 1st chapter, speaking about a very specific scenario in which you get Makkot, you get Malkut, you get lashes in the Bedin, but not because of your regular offense from the Torah, but because you were a falsified testimony. You were an ed sheker. You were a person that came forward with a testimony that was false, but not just any falsehood testimony. What happens in Torah when you want to make somebody pay to somebody else? Dine mamonot. So the Torah says, Al pi shnayim edim. You need 2 witnesses in order to obligate somebody to pay to someone else. If you can't prove it otherwise with documentation, you need 2 edim. If one person comes and says, I saw Reuben borrowed money from Shimon, and Reuben says, I never borrowed money from Shimon, so then you forget about it, nothing there. If 2 people come and say, we were there when Reuben borrowed money from Shimon, then you have al pi shnei edim, he becomes obligated. Same is for punishments of capital punishments. If you have 2 people who say, we saw Reuben killed Shimon, we saw it, that's how it happened, that's when it happened, that's how it happened, and then you will kill Reuben because we believe the 2 edim. The Torah has given ne'emanut of a trustworthiness to two kosher edim witnesses, that we act upon what they say, and then we have a karvach, really a gezerah shava, davar. We learn that also for dinei arayot, for things of promiscuity and also other related topics. We need two edim. But what we're saying is encapsulated. Two edim are always believed in the Torah. You have two witnesses, you go with them. If you have a migu against them, if you have rov, the majority shows not like that. You have a safek, sfekai, compounded, double doubt against them, we don't care. Two edim, two kosher edim are always believed. They have ne'emanut. But then, what happens if you have a contradicting group of edim? So, Mr. X comes, well, let's call them group one of edim. Two edim come and say, Reuben killed Shimon. We were there. We were there when Reuben killed Shimon. And then a second group of edim come and they say, Reuben didn't kill Shimon. We were there. Also, they say. And Levi killed Shimon. Reuben didn't touch Shimon. So now you have a contradictory, two groups that they contradict each other. What happens? Anyone?
Throughout the case.
Nothing. We throw out the case. We don't know who to believe. We don't say, well, they came first, we believe them. Or they came last, we believe them. No. They're two equal eduts, and therefore we just throw out as if no edut is there, and that's the end of it. This is a massively complex sugya all over Shas. We have it as trei utrei. Now, that's not edim zomimim. That is hachasha. The second group of edim are testifying that the first group is saying a lie. So you say Reuben killed Shimon. Liars. We were there and Reuben didn't touch Shimon. Levi killed Shimon. So they are machish. They are denying the fact of the edut itself. But then you have edim zomemim. Edim zomemim, which we're going to spend the next 7 pages on, is a case in which the second group comes and says, we don't know if you're lying. That Reuben killed Shimon. Maybe Reuben killed Shimon. We don't know, but we were not there. We were not with Reuben and Shimon. Maybe Reuben killed Shimon. We don't know. But you could not have witnessed that. You know why? Because every second of the day that you say you saw him kill him, you were with us. You were sitting in our living room, learning Torah with us. I don't know, playing cards. You were there with us the whole day. You could not have been there and witnessed Reuben kill Shimon. We don't know, maybe Reuben killed Shimon. But you could not have witnessed it. Your goof was not there because you were with me, with us. That's edim zomemim. Now, the Torah speaks about this in the parasha of edim zomemim. Does not speak necessarily about the cases that we have in hachasha, that you're denying the fact of the edut, but you're saying you could not have been there. And if you have edim zomemim, then the Torah says in that case, also logically, some Rishonim explain, logically it makes more sense to believe the second group because they're not testifying on the fact, they're just saying you were with us. We believe that. So therefore, he makes the first ones completely X'd out of the picture. Now, what do you do with that? What you do in a regular case is, if they wanted to kill, in this case, they wanted to say Reuben killed Shimon, right? So if the second group of edim would not come, what would have happened? We would have executed Reuben. We would have. Now, Baruch Hashem, the second group showed up before we executed Reuben. And what do we say? Kasher zamam lasod le'achiv. we do to them what they intended to do to their brother. They intended to get Reuben killed, falsified edut. They falsified edut to kill Reuben, and we do exactly that. We kill them exactly the way they wanted to kill Reuben. And then there are cases that we don't do exactly like what they did. For instance, if we killed Reuben, these are things that you'll see in the Gemara, and of course each one of these things we're going to explain at length, but for instance, one of the interesting ones, strange ones, is what happens if we killed Reuben? We killed him, right? The Beit Din executed Reuben, and 5 minutes later, huffing and puffing, these two people come and say, we have a way. And they make the first group Edim Zomemim. What happens? Nothing. We don't touch the first. Why? Why don't we do that? Or, as we will see in the Gemara here, the exceptions that our Mishnah gives to Edim Zomemim as well. Now, I understand that I'm creating a little cliffhanger here. It's intentional, but it's also because I don't want to confuse you too much. I want to go to Daf Petet, right, page 89 of Masechet Sanhedrin, and here's the case: if someone comes, a bat kohen, a daughter of a kohen, was married, was engaged, was married, and two witnesses come and say she slept around with Reuben. Right? A married woman sleeping with someone else, she gets what? Henek. She gets killed. But how does she get killed? There are 4 different methods used by the Sanhedrin to execute someone. Right? We have skila, we have sarefa, we have chenek, and we have hereg. Right? Skila is basically they would tie him up, they throw him off a height. If he doesn't die, he will be stoned to death, right? Then you have serefa, you have chenek, and hereg. So she gets a lighter method of death. Chenek she gets. But what does he get? The person that slept with her, not her husband, Sayith, right? He gets hereg, right? Which is even a lighter one. So what do we give to Edim? In other words, the 2 witnesses come and say, we saw that this guy slept with this woman who is married. So what do you do with the woman and the man? If nothing else happens, you kill both of them. Now, the 2 Edim later come and say, well, wait a second, really, they're lying. Because they were, maybe they slept, maybe they didn't. But these people, the testimony is false because the witnesses were with us that day. The whole day they were with us. So now you have Hazama, Edim Zomemim. Now you start scratching your head and say, wait a second. How do we kill this Edim? Hereg or Chenek? They wanted to give Chenek to the woman and hereg to the man. What, you flip a coin and you kill one of them like this, one of them like, well, how? So the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that you give them what they were trying to give to the man. Even if the man is not there anymore, necessarily, they ran away, he's out of the country, they wanted to cause her to die with chenek, but we don't give them henek. We give them hereg. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Kasher zamam laasot leachiv." If you have an achiv and achoto in the same case, you choose what they wanted to do, they intended to do to the achiv, not to the achoto, right? That's the mission. So here you have a case in Masechet Sanhedrin that speaks about edim zomemim in a scenario that they don't get exactly what they intended to do. Our Mishnah is a second half of that, speaking about other scenarios that we don't give the same punishment as they intended to give to their brothers, but rather we just lash them. Right? We don't kill them, we just lash them. That would be the case. So let's, without further ado, begin. Ketzat ha'edim na'asim zomemin. Which really what the Mishnah means is, how in the world do you punish a group of edim that you can't actually deliver the punishment that they intended to give? How do you make them zomem when you can't actually deliver on the punishment they were trying to inflict their friends with? And the Mishnah is going to give you examples. Ketzat ha'edim nasim zomemim. So here is a scenario in which you cannot inflict them with the same thing. Me'idim anu be'ish ploni shehu ben gerusha or ben halusa. They come, the group of edim come and say, well, you see this Reuben guy over here, the Kohen? He is not a real Kohen. He is a halal. Now, what happens if a Kohen marries a divorcee? What happens if a Kohen marries a divorcee? What happens with him? What happens with him? Nothing. Now, he cannot go up there and do Nesiat Kapayim. We don't give him teruma. We don't give him aliyat kohen. None of those things we give him, right? Marries a goya, same thing. Zona. We don't give any privileges of a kohen to a person that has married someone he was not supposed to marry. But as soon as he divorces them and accepts publicly that I'm never going to go that path again, never going to do this again, he's back in his kashrut, he's back on his feet, he's going to go up in duchen, and he's going to get aliyah rishonah, aliyah kohen, all that. But if he had a child with that woman, that the divorcee or the zonah, then what happens? That child, is he a kohen or not? Absolutely not. He's no different than Joe on the street, a regular Jew, right? He is a Kohen halal. He's absolutely not a Kohen halachically. Absolutely not. He's like a regular Jew. So that's a halal. Now, these two people come and say, we know that when his father, this guy's Kohen's father, when he married his wife, there was a gerusha. She was a divorcee before birth. Rashi says before birth. It, of course, doesn't mean before birth. It means before conception. Right? Before conception. That this baby was conceived after the mother already was a gerusha, and therefore he's not a Kohen. Now, until now, he's going up there, duchening, he's a Peloni HaKohen, and now they just disqualified him from being a Kohen. And happens to be that the two edim are Kohanim. Right? So do we say, Geschmack, you tried to make him a non-Kohen. From now on, no aliyah rishonah, no teruma, no shok, no zeroah, nothing, no privilege. Do we say that? No. Why not? Well, also, based on Rashi, really, even if the guy is a Yisrael, do we say that his biyah should be posel savan for keuna? A little more complex. But do we do that? And the answer is no, we don't do it. So let's see the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, and omrim, we don't say, ben gerusha or ben chalusa. That this guy, this fellow, this group of people, we say zeh, but it means really, there's two people who came here and they're kohanim themselves, let them also become pasul from keuna. We don't say that. We lash them one series of lashes, 39, we call it arba'im. It's really 39 lashes in the betin, and that's it. Another scenario. Maybe we'll just see in a moment why that is, right? It's very geschmack. Says the Mishnah, we testify that this fellow, Reuben, he killed someone, but not intentionally. Not intentionally. He killed him. He was chopping some wood, and he brought his axe up, and the thing flew away into this guy's head and killed him. Right? Accidental. Shogeg. what happens in a murder that happened with Shogeg? The guy has to run to Galut. He has to go to Are Miklat, right? The cities of refuge he has to go to. So they come to Bedin, they say, well, this guy, we saw him accidentally kill Shimon. So he has to go to Galut. And then turns out that they could not have seen it because the second group say, yo, you were in Florida with us. You're not even in Los Angeles. What are you talking about? Right? So now, what do we say? Do we say that you leave your house and go live in Are Miklat? Or do we not say? So says the Mishnah, no, we don't. What do we do with them? Lashes, right? En omrim yigalet ze tachtav ela lo ke-40. He observes the 39 lashes series, right? One set of the Oraita Malkut. By the way, in parentheses, when the Mishnah says ben Gerusha or ben Chalutza, Ramban, the Nachmanides, writes that the ben Chalutza is lav davka. Why? Because a Kohen that married a Chalutza. What's a Chalutza? If someone died, Rahman al-Islam, without children, right? Someone died without children, and he has a brother. What should happen? The case of Yevama. Yavam, the brother should really be marrying the wife of his deceased brother in order to continue his legacy. But he doesn't have to. It's a mitzvah for him to do it, but he could opt out. How do you opt out? With a process called chalitza, right? The whole thing, shoe thing that he does, spitting her, the whole thing. Now, this is like a form of, rabbinically, a form of divorce, because they're connected to each other. You know that they don't have to marry each other, right? He just takes her home. There's no chuppah v'kiddushin, that it's not necessary for Yavam. So therefore, when you want to separate them, you need a process which simplifies the process. It's not a real get, but at the same time, it's midarabanan considered like a divorce. So therefore, a Kohen, can he marry that woman that got chalitza? Now her husband died, her brother-in-law didn't want to take her, did chalitza, now she's available for shidduchim, right? Can a Kohen marry her? Well, midoraita, absolutely yes. Midarabanan, no. So says the Ramban, you can't tell me that if he married a chalutza, which midoraita is completely fine, now we're going to make him edim zomemim, and do kasher zamam la'asod lachim, and give him a deoraita level lashes. Can't do that. So it says it's lav davka, right? Nimukei Yosef tries to fit it in. That becomes just a side point in our Mishnah. But where do we get this whole from? Let's start our Gemara. Says the Gemara, haketzat. How does this whole thing work? En ha'edim nasim zomemim mibai. You should have said ketzat en ha'edim nasim zomemim, because we're talking about a case, a one scenario in which you have all of the elements of a second group of testimony coming forth, and still they don't become zomemim, they don't get the punishment, they just get lashes. So if me and you would be wording this Mishnah, what would we say? In which scenario don't the edim become zomemim? That's what we would say. Not how do they become zomemim. How don't they become zomemim? Because do they become zomemim here? No. They don't. Zomem means you get the same punishment. They don't get the same punishment here. This is an exception rather to the rule, not the rule. So if you want to present to me the rule here, you have to say, tell me the exceptions. In which case don't they become zomemim? So the wording of the Mishnah is off. It shouldn't say, how do they become zomemim? It should say, how don't they become zomemim? Give me a scenario in which they don't become zomemim, right? So says the Mishnah, Ve'od, another question. That's one kasha. The second kasha is, says the Gemara, Midekatani lekaman aval amru lahem heach atem meitim. You know, if you go to Daf Hey, right, just 4 short pages later, there we actually have what should be the beginning of this Mishnah. Because you just jump in, you leave the rabbi with 30 minutes of hakdama to fill in where this starts in the middle of the story. We don't even know what edim zomemim are, right? The rabbi has to give a whole hakdama, a whole preface of what edim zomemim are. You just jump in and say, which one is not edim zomemim? You know where edim zomemim are? Daf Hey. 4 pages later, it says over there, let's read it in the Gemara. אבל אמרו להם, היאך אתם מעידים שהרי באותו היום אתם הייתם עמנו. In that case, in which the second group of edim come and say, how can you be testifying that Reuben killed Shimon when you guys were with us? That's in Daf Hey. The classic edim zomemim 101 is in Daf Hey. 4 pages later. You have to tell me that first here in Daf Bet and put this in Daf Hey. Why did you switch the order? So it says the Gemara, Tana Hatamkai. You're correct. All your questions are Kemayim Karim El Nefesh Ayefa. Amazing questions. You know why? Because Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the way he authored the Mishnayot is in a way that topics flow from one Masechta to another Masechta. And there is Seder for Mishnayot in one Seder. So in Seder Nezikim, Masechet Makkot follows Masechet Sanhedrin, and here Rabbeinu HaKadosh is coming from the last Mishnah in Masechet Sanhedrin, Elu Nechenakin, which we already discussed earlier in the preface that we gave, in the case of a Bat Kohen, when there is a group, testimony of a group against a Bat Kohen, that she's married, the daughter of a Kohen who's married and went and slept around. In that case, we give not herek but chenek. We give the punishment of him to the edim, not her to the edim. So that's the exception. So it's as if to say, Rabbeinu HaKadosh said, once we are discussing in the last Mishnah of Sanhedrin edim zomemin, let me tell you about edim zomemin. And once the last thing we discuss is a scenario in which they don't get the punishment that they intended for the fellow. Let me tell you all the exceptions first, and then I'll jump right back in to the actual concept of edim zomemim. That's how our Mishnah happened. You want to know why it is, what it is, and where it is? That's the reason for it. So says the Gemara. It's actually next piece is a very interesting and exciting piece. We're out of time. Be'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow morning, rise and shine. We will be continuing in the Sechta in the next topic. Chazak u'baruch.